Hello everybody. This is our third little, that's Becky. So third little, I was going to bring my other daughters. Maybe in the future we'll have a few more. But this is the ranch. It's nice out here. And we're going to do another one. This is kind of, I'm titling the little posts, Coastal Bend Justice Group. And we just want to talk about sort of like issues of somewhat politics, things that I talk about. So, but I've been here for maybe an hour already, and I said, okay, let's do it. I got a few little jokes, but I don't know. I got like too many because I haven't been telling them all. This one is kind of hard to tell, but I'm going to do it. And actually, we were just discussing a ministry out in this area, and my daughter was saying, oh, they used to do, I'm familiar with, it was a ministry that I don't think they do. It wasn't just here. It was international. It was called Exodus International. I'm familiar with Exodus International. Exodus International used to be a ministry for therapeutic for gay homosexual. That's what Exodus International used to be. Now, if I remember right, because I, read even the Christian sites, I believe they disbanded years ago. But my daughter was telling me they went out to area here, and I think my friends own that property. And so I'm going to go see. They used to do a ministry called the Body of Christ Boot Camp, and also it was called South Texas Bible Institute, and it was run by friends of mine that were named Fred and Betty McCullough. So after this video, I'm going to see if they're still out there. There used to be a little fellowship once a month, and I maybe went about 10 years ago, and I've never been back. Okay, one of the jokes, it's kind of hard to say. Those of you that read all the posts, Becky, doesn't see them all, and they don't have internet connection out here. But some of the posts, are kind of like rough. The titles were kind of rough. So I had a friend of mine. Now, I'm not going to give the name, but maybe some of the other guys, some of my friends from the streets are on Facebook, and they read my posts. So one of them was Parable of CCPD Sodomite. That's what I named it. But if you watch the video, you'll get, if those who watched it understood what I was talking about. Well, after I posted that, like the next day, one of my street friends came by. Now, I've written about this before, that on the streets, there are guys, friends of mine that I help. Some of them you have seen on video over the years. And some are just bi, some are gay. Now, those friends of mine, I treat them just like anybody else. One time, one of the guys that I was working with that really was into the Bible and into God, he had a big background. I remember I started helping him early on. He's still a friend of mine. And as I started helping him, one of my other friends said, John, I think so-and-so might be a little gay, because he's getting ready to, he had to go back to jail for like a month. And they said, he dyed his hair blonde and he's kind of wearing shorts and all. And so I figured maybe he was. He was one of the younger guys. And I said, but he was the only one at the halfway house. I gave him a Bible, and he would read it every morning. He had a Christian background. And out of all the other guys at the halfway house, he was the only one on his own, because I used to go visit, and my old fire department Bible, he'd be reading it. I gave it to those guys. So I accepted him. And I remember early on, I didn't know, or maybe he didn't know that I knew that he was bi. So one day I told him, eventually he left our halfway house. We had some problems with that halfway house. And I texted him, I said, look, I'm going to go do one of the meetings, Bishop or Kingsville. And the way he tried to tell me was, he said, can I bring my partner? I'll give this name because I don't know who it was. He said, can I bring my partner Larry? Would he be invited? That was his way of seeing what I was going to say. And I texted him back. I said, sure. I said, everyone's invited. And he never brought a friend named Larry. I think it was just a way. And I still continued to help him. He's in jail right now, doing some time. So the guys in the streets know that John is, and as a matter of fact, I was helping him so much, and he was always happy to see me, like he'd be asking for me. Some of the street guys thought I was fooling around with him, just 'cause he was so happy. Like when they saw me run into him at Timmons, they were saying, you know, they'd see he was happy, like, "Oh, John, you're here," and so we would do things, and some people thought, I remember one of the other guys one time, Mingo, I don't know where he is. He might be in jail, some of these guys. But he kind of said, maybe was jealous or something, because I never know who's doing what. And but I told him, I said, no, I'm like a father to him. I said, and that other aspect that he has, I'm honest with him about what the Scripture teaches. I said, but I never, I accepted all the guys. So that the guys on the streets, I don't justify certain activities, but I accepted them in the sense of they were always, I never said I'm not going to help this one or I'm only going to, okay, that's how they know. But because of the post I did, sodomite post, which you have to watch the video, one of my friends came by like the next day, and he's never brought it up before, and I never know who has done stuff. And on the streets, some guys that are straight, they prostitute themselves. The guys that are addicted, they do it for money. That's something that's done. If they need money for drugs, and even if they're not gay, they will do stuff. I know that. Okay, that's common knowledge. So one of my friends came by, and I guess he was worried that I was like going to be anti-people. And this is how he says it to me. Now, you know these guys. I'm not going to give your name. He says, you know, John, I've sold my body before, for drugs. And I never knew he did, but like I said, and then he says, yeah, he's saying it with a serious face. He says, yes, I've been a man whore. That's the term he uses. So I told him, oh, brother, I said, no. I said, when you're not with me on the videos, I've told everybody. I said, I've told him, brother so-and-so's a man whore. That's a joke, of course. I haven't told everybody on the videos. But the way he brought it up, and you might say, John, you shouldn't be joking about it. Let me say, that's life in the street. And I wanted to share it because it was funny, but it shows you the plight of some of the things. And there might have been another one. I had that one, I was the hearing test, or, I went to get flash drives at Walmart, the thumb drives, because I needed to get a few. And every time I go to Walmart to get the thumb drives, they got like 7 to 10 aisles of electronics. And they actually have little thumb drives in one aisle that are for something else. And then they have the other ones you need like 10 aisles over. And every time I go to get the thumb drive, they're the best price at Walmart, I always have to ask, and it upsets me. So I'm there again. The other day I said, look, I'm asking again. I said, every time I come, because you got them in this aisle. That. So he showed me, they're here, sir. I said, look, you got management problems here. You know how I am. So after a while, he kind of like walked away. I said, you need management here, brother. And then I went to Stripes to get gas and cigarettes, the little corner store. And I swiped my card. Speed last joke. Oh, but I wanted to do the Ogopogo. I'll do that at the end. I swiped my card, and they have the little pamphlets right next to the thing that you swipe, right there on a rack. And as soon as I swiped the card, they all fell down, like little maps and all. And even the kid at the counter is like, oh, yeah, that's not the first time that's in a bad place. So I picked it up. I stuck it in the candy aisle. I said, you got management problems, brother. I said, if this happened before, and the customer behind me, I think he laughed like, oh, this guy's wanting to. So that's the Social Justice Club, as we talk about. There were no real big issues, and what I probably will do is tag along with this video some of what I'm teaching on my videos, and that's fine, because when I was doing the Bible studies, Rebecca was in the Bible studies. I used to drive to Alice and do them. My daughter Debbie, I mentioned to her, we're going to do our little thing, do you have any issues? My daughter Debbie and her boyfriend, Andy, they own a nice trailer, and it's in a trailer park in Flower Bluff and Corpus Christi. But they have a regulation. It's a city ordinance. I know why they do this, but if the trailer is like more than 5 years old, you cannot move it to another trailer park. And the reason they're doing that is they basically want to get rid of a lot of the trailer. I guess they just don't want a lot of the trailer parks, multiplying, because sometimes they get a ghetto look in some areas. I've been to some where I live in Flower Bluff, but my daughter was saying that's an issue for her. She wants to get because her trailer is very nice. My daughter here, this is not even a trailer. This is like a prefab home out here. And my other daughter has something sort of like that. It's not really a trailer. It's more like a But if it's more than so many years old, you can't move it anywhere to another trailer park. So you're kind of stuck. And I told my daughter, I said, you need to get some land in the country, because city ordinances are like that. But all cities don't have ordinances like that. So being that's a issue, and she's wanting to try and change that, so that would fit in.
Because I know Alice will allow you to have trailer homes anywhere you want them. We just drove down the street the other day, her parents' house, Luna's parents' house, and somebody had just moved a trailer in. It was an older trailer, and it was new, but they had moved it into the lot and put it in like this. It was a long one.
Yes.
Yeah, like Corpus Christi only. And I think the reason why they do that is really because they don't get the money from the contracting work. They don't get the money from all these other little things that they want to get. They get more money out of, I guess, building a house versus just putting a trailer on a lot. And then, I get it, you don't want it to look trashy, but it's like, but not everybody can afford a house, and not everyone can afford to build a new house. Because, golly, like, all the houses that are available in Corpus now are more older or more like newer houses that they're selling. And they're building up the suburbs out there and stuff like that and doing all these crazy things. And it's like, not everybody can afford that. And a lot of the older homes in Corpus, too, are in neighborhoods that are real rough. And not everyone wants to move into those neighborhoods. Even Bethany's off Airline in Rodfield, right? Even her house was nice. And it was an okay neighborhood. It was a nice area, but she had trouble with people breaking in, stealing her stuff, swiping her cars all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, and I get that, but it's just like, they put all these regulations on people out there, and, basically, like you were saying too before, now they're stuck. Now if the mobile home place wants to raise the rent up $1,000 a month, they're stuck. They can't move.
Correct. And they own like my daughter owns that trailer, or that prefab. Yeah. So that's ordinances, and cities are different on those things. Or I also will mention, I posted a link that the Texas Rangers are coming in to investigate the police department in Taft. Oh, yeah. So a lot of the little issues you see me talk about, Taft is a little town around here, and so they got so many complaints that the Texas Rangers come in. They usually investigate local police departments if you have a lot of problems and difficulties. What I want to do, because we don't have a whole lot of issues that social justice. What?
The Switzerland bag.
Oh, yes. My daughter showed me. About 15 years ago, I did a ministry trip to Switzerland. And it was so nice. I'd like to go back again. And I stayed at a very upper scale Christian halfway house. And those people were going to start a church. I did meetings. We would do meetings and all. It was very wonderful to be there. But I don't have any of the things that I bought at that time. And my daughter showed me today, I bought her that bag. I bought my kids gifts, when I was in Switzerland. Little stuff. But she found the bag. I said, oh, don't lose it. I said, that's the only thing from that trip that we still have. So that was nice. She showed that to me. This might either be titled Switzerland bag, but I always look for titles that pique interest. So it'll either be man whore or Switzerland bag. But I want to teach then a little bit. On the other videos that I'm doing, my teaching videos, I've been overviewing the story of Ruth in the Bible. And I'll do a real quick overview because Becky has not been in those other teachings. The book of Ruth in the Bible is the story of a girl by the name of Ruth. And historically, this happened in the time of the Judges. I just taught the book of Judges the last month and a half. And that might be about 1,200 years before the time of Christ. Some dated about 1,300 years BC up till around 1,000 years BC. So, figure this is a true story. This is history. And this story happened about 3,000 years ago. Some people that are not, up on all the dates and all, it helps, I notice, when I say that. So this story of the book of Ruth in the Old Testament is an actual historical account of what took place with this particular girl by the name of Ruth. And it happened about 3,000 years ago. And it's interesting because there's only one other Bible book in the Old Testament, I believe just one other, that just is named by a lady's name. The other one is Esther, and this one I'm going to talk about is Ruth. Now, I already talked a little bit about the story, but this is what the story is. I did chapter 1 and 2 in the last couple of weeks. Ruth lived in an area back in that time which was called Moab. Moab were the other areas where they worshipped false gods. They did not know the true God. And so the Jewish people, the nation of Israel, they were the ones that were the worshipers of the true God, okay? Yahweh, Jehovah. They worshiped the true God. So, in the book of Judges, as you notice, those that saw my videos, that's a tough book, because what happens in the whole book of Judges is God's people are in captivity to all of these other groups of people, and one of them happened to be the people of Moab. So when you read Judges, you're not reading any real wonderful actual stories. You're reading the Moabites were oppressing, or the Midianites, these other little peoples, groups, that were fighting God's people. And then they cried out to God, and God raised up someone, Samson, Jephthah, different people. They came and fight, and then they killed the enemy, and they wiped them out. That's the whole book of Judges. So the book of Ruth took place at that time, where all these battles of Samson and Gideon and Jephthah, which I just taught. But the book of Ruth shows you something different. That's why I think it's a good book that is added in our Bibles in the Old Testament. Because it was at that same time that a family by the name of, the wife was Naomi, the husband's name was Elimelech, and they had 2 sons. And there was a famine in Israel, in the area they were living, Judah, I believe. And so they went to this town of Moab. It would be like today if Corpus Christi had a water boil or whatever, and people said, we don't want to stay in Corpus Christi. We want to go get a place where there's clean water, and there's maybe clean water in Alice. So let's just move. We're tired of the water boils. We had so many. This is what happened in the story of Ruth. There was a famine in the land where they were living, and they decided to go to the outskirts, to the city, the area where Moabites live, Moab. So the lady, her name is Naomi. Hi, Lou. That's Lou.
Hello.
The lady's name is Naomi, and she gets her 2 sons and her husband, and they said, we're going to move. And when they go to this area called Moab, they're there for 10 years. But it's tragic, because Naomi and Elimelech, the parents, the husband, Elimelech, dies. And it's hard, because figure a single mom now with her 2 sons has moved to a new city, and they have hopes of things going better for them, and the husband dies. And now you have the lady, Naomi, having to raise the 2 sons. Now, not only did that happen, but her one son dies, and then the other son dies. So they moved in to that area of Moab to start like a new life, in a sense. And she lost her 2 sons and her husband. Now, the sons, while they were there, got married to some of the girls that were there, which was sort of like natural, the new town. So the 2 girls that were married to the sons, the woman, Naomi, says, God's hand has turned against me. I came here to start a new life. I came here to have a wonderful future, and I thought everything was going to go much better. But all this has happened to me. And she tells her two daughter-in-laws, I'm going back. I'm going back to Israel, back to my home. She says, I'm sorry it worked out this way. But you go back, you stay here in your hometown. Hopefully you'll find other guys, you'll remarry and stuff. But the one daughter-in-law, her name is Ruth, which this book in the Bible is named after. And Ruth says to her mother-in-law, no, I want to go with you. I want to be with you. Ruth must have saw something with her time with Naomi that Ruth said, your God will be my God. You see, they had their pagan gods, but she saw that the God, the true God, was different than what they understood. Even though Naomi said, look how tough everything has been for me. She still understood. Maybe it was the dedication of Naomi to not forsake God when all that happened to her. Maybe it was her dedication to say, even though all this has happened bad for me, she still believed in God, the God of Israel, the true God. So Ruth says, I'm going with you. And she does. And Naomi says to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, if you want to leave your family, you live here, Ruth. You have all these family here. We're not even part of your ancestry. But Ruth insists, says, no, I want to go with you. You're my mother-in-law. And then I taught this already, but Lou and Becky didn't hear it, so I'll teach it again. And Naomi says, what good is it going to do you, Ruth, to stay with me? I'm old, but even if I get remarried, I might get pregnant and have a kid. But are you going to wait all of those years for that son to grow up? And you're going to be older by then, Ruth. There's nothing in this for you. But Ruth insists, so she goes with Naomi. Now, when Naomi gets back into her area, it's interesting because everybody didn't leave, quote, the hometown when there was a famine. Some people left the hometown. And when you go and start a new journey and say, you know what, I'm going to start a new journey. The water is real bad here in Corpus Christi. Some guy wrote an editorial, adios Corpus Christi. It was funny. I talked about that editorial the other day. His name is Paul Gingrich, and he said 10 things why I'm leaving Corpus Christi. This was in the paper. And he's a white guy, and I'm surprised the paper put it in. He said, these are the things that I will not miss. And he said, the Selena Memorial, which is kind of like racist, because the guy is saying, I'm not going to miss that. And then he said, maybe they'll make one for Emilio Navarra, which is like a Mexican guy, singer that just died. And they put that in. The other thing he put was misspelled words in the Mexican restaurant menus. He put that in, the 10 things he won't miss. And it was kind of a racist thing. Well, so some people decided we're leaving. And Naomi was one of those. So what happens when you say, I'm going off to brighter pastures, I'm leaving this? What happens if you go back home after that? Do your neighbors say, oh, welcome back? They normally say, oh, smart ass, you thought it was going to be better in Houston. You're back here again. Naomi kind of had that happen to her, in a sense. Like, oh, look at this. Your husband died, your kids died, and you got this Ruth. But Ruth comes back. This is Ruth, the book in the Bible is only 4 chapters long, so this is the first 3 chapters. And when Ruth comes back with Naomi, there's a sort of like tradition that they had. And when the people were working in the barley fields, sort of like working in a field, the women, what they could do is when they're harvesting the barley and the grain and all, the women can go and whatever's left, they didn't harvest everything, whatever's kind of left on the ground, the women go behind and that's for them. They say, don't take everything. So Ruth goes out and works in one of those fields. That's a field of a relative of theirs by the name of Boaz. Well, Boaz is older now, okay? Boaz is not young, maybe middle age, and Ruth is young. She's young and, like a bride to be aged, someone was going to get married. But Ruth goes and works in that field, and Boaz, when the man that he comes back, now he's a relative of Ruth, okay? Or he's a relative of the family that Ruth married into. Okay? He's a relative. And in the Bible, that's referred to as a kinsman redeemer. Okay? This is the whole real story that it fits in the Bible, because Christ is the redeemer. And a kinsman redeemer was this. If you had a brother that was married, or if you had a relative that was married, and the male dies, the kinsman redeemer, or the brother in the family, they're going to remarry. They're going to take that brother's wife so they could keep the family going. Okay? They keep the family line going. I taught some of that recently. Well, Boaz finds out that this girl Ruth is part of the family that she had a husband that died. And so he's one that would actually qualify if Ruth wanted to marry Boaz. But Boaz is thinking, no, this girl is too young, and he's not hitting on her or anything. But Ruth goes home, tells her mother-in-law, Naomi, the field she worked in, and Naomi says, oh, that's one of our relatives. Go tonight. And when he's in the certain garage threshing floor where they work on the barley and the wheat and all, Naomi says, go tonight, and this is a tradition. And when he lays down in his rack in his bed, you just lay next to him. That was a meaning of saying, I want to be engaged to you. I want to marry you. So she goes that night, listens to, it says she obeyed the words of her mother-in-law. And Boaz, it says, after he ate and drank, he was tired. And that was the plan. Go, when he's fallen asleep, he won't know you're there. And it says Boaz woke up at night. He's the older man that owned that area, that field mill. He's wealthy too. And he said, what are you doing here, Ruth? This is chapter 3 of Ruth. And Ruth makes her intentions known. And Boaz is like, you're so noble. There's all these younger guys that you could be with. But you actually are deciding to do something to stay in the family with the kinsman, because she didn't have to do that. You understand? She was not part of Israel. That was a part of the Jewish people, but she's a Moabite. So if she didn't have to do any of this, but she's going to go along with all of the traditions that the Jewish people had. And so Boaz says, for someone so young, you didn't even have to come back. You didn't have to stay with your mother-in-law. You're going to follow all the traditions. You're going to worship our God. And he said, you're a just person because you didn't look for somebody younger, nor did you look for somebody with wealth. You just wanted to do what was right. But he tells her this. He says, Ruth, if you really want me to be the one that marries you, even though he's older, he said, I'll marry you. You're young and you're wonderful. There's nothing wrong with you. He said, but there's one other relative that's closer in relations to the family, and he has the option first. And he says, I stay here tonight. And he says, tomorrow I'm going to go and see if he wants to marry you first. And then he says, but if he doesn't want to marry you, I'll go ahead and marry you. And so Ruth tells her mother-in-law, Naomi, what happened. And Naomi says, oh, wait. She said, because surely he's not going to even be able to sleep until he goes talks to that other relative, because he's going to want to do it fast to see, and if not, he's going to marry you. Now that's chapter 3, and there's one more chapter, but I didn't read it yet, so everyone, I read it before many times, but I'm rereading this. Okay. So the next, I'll probably won't teach it until the next time we come out. Okay. But that's Ruth in the Bible. Those are 4 chapters, and we covered so far chapter 1, 2, 3, and chapter 4. You're going to find out what happens. It could be a really big story. It could be something and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it now. I'm not kidding, because that was chapter 3. Okay. So that
your other joke.
And let me say one thing, even though I didn't want to teach it. But let's just say that Ruth and Boaz do get married, and let's just say that they have a son, and say that the son's name is Obed, and Obed has a son, and that son's name is Jesse. And Jesse has a son, and that son's name is King David. And King David has many sons, and one of them is Jesus Christ. And in Matthew chapter 1, Ruth is mentioned in the family tree of Jesus. In Matthew 1, it says Boaz had Obed, Boaz and Ruth. Boaz had Obed, and Obed had Jesse, and Jesse had King David. And Jesus comes all the way from that family. So this very interesting story of a simple handmaiden by the name of Ruth, a Moabite, who in the book of Judges, these were the enemies. But you see redemption in the story, because Jesus himself, the great deliverer, the great judge, was born from the family of someone even from Moab, which was Ruth, came from that line. So, that's in Matthew chapter 1. That's the genealogy. The last joke I'll do, how long do we go? 31 minutes. But Ruth is, it's an important book for redemption, because Christ is our Redeemer. He's the one that redeems us, purchased us. The Bible says by his own blood, purchased us back. I didn't even have to look at the notes, but I remembered something that made me laugh. I talk a little bit about media narrative, meaning the media has the capability to sway you. I'll give you one example. Some of you know, just watching the videos, I was not a supporter of Trump or Hillary in the beginning, but I became a supporter of Trump for one reason. I got so tired of seeing the media shape the story. Like, we're going to really get Trump, and we're not going to really go after Hillary. Because many of Trump said he was going to raise $6 million for veterans. He did a debate in the beginning, said, well, I'm not going to do the Fox debate, but we're going to do something else. We're going to raise money for vets. Well, did he raise the $6 million or not? Well, he raised about $3.5, $4 million. Then he added $1 million of his own money in, and so he gave away about $6 million to vet groups. But the media was on him. And look, Trump didn't take any money for his organization out of that. Some groups that raise money for vets, they actually have like 70% of the money that comes in runs the organization, and but Trump gave it all. He gave all the money, but they were on him and on him and on him. And you could have investigated a lot more about financial mismanagement and misdealings with Hillary Clinton, the Clinton Foundation taking money from Saudi Arabia and all these types, but they were after him. So Trump this week did the thing, and he kind of called them out. He did a news conference, but he talked to them like normally nobody would speak to them. And that's why a lot of people are supporting him. They're seeing that. But let me give you one little interesting thing got me mad just yesterday. There's a judge, I think his name is Gonzalo Curiel, okay? I'm just remembering. Gonzalo Curiel. This judge has got, Trump used to have a little like fake university, Trump University, but a lot of investment people do stuff like this. You go to their seminars, they do them in Corpus, and a lot of the people said they got ripped off, that Trump ripped them off because they got into debt and that they didn't get the returns. Well, that's probably legitimate. It looks like Trump did do that. It looks like but there were other people that said, no, we liked the real estate program and it was worth it. But some people got hooked for like paying $35,000 to get this little real estate program. But I've seen others like this, okay? Trump is not unique in this. Many of the financial groups come along, and I used to go to the free seminars, and then they want you to join $150 a month. And I said, look, brother, I used to tell them, I'm just read the book. I wouldn't pay anybody, $150 a month to give me advice. So this is how a lot of these companies work. Well, these people sued Trump. This is before he started running. Well, now the judge named Gonzalo Curiel, I got to give you the name, the judge decided this week to release all the paperwork from this lawsuit, which is going to make Trump look bad. Now, the judge screwed up because he released all the paperwork, which you don't know if he should have released it. And then the day he released it, the next day he said, oh, I released too much, I'm taking some back. He might have been, because Trump thinks that that judge is an anti-Trump guy just because in general. So Trump, like no one else, said, and I think he's a Mexican too. Well, the reason he said that is he feels like that man, that judge, might be part of the the wall and this and this. That's why Trump said that. Whether the man's Mexican or not, I don't know, because the name is Gonzalo Curiel. Does it make a difference if he's Mexican? Not really. But this is what the World News reported, and I also heard it on the Huffington Post and the other sites. Whenever they say, and Trump accuses the judge of being Mexican, and they even did it, Scott Pelley on a CBS World News did it, and this is how they report it. This is media bias. And Trump says he's Mexican, but he was born, I think, in Indiana. And then I heard it again from another one. Trump accuses the judge of being Mexican, but he was born in Indiana. And then they stop and they go on with the story. Now the average person that maybe is real pro-Hillary, I know friends that would be saying to me, what an idiot Trump is. The man was born in Indiana and he thinks he's a Mexican. Let me ask you this. For all the saps that fell for that, do you think there were ever any Mexicans that were ever born in Indiana? Of course. Lulu was born in the United States. She's Mexican. Many Mexicans are born in the United States. But the reason the media did it that way is to make you look like, for those who would fall for it, like, well, obviously there's no Mexican heritage people that are ever born in Indiana. That's why they did it. The whole issue was stupid. But if the media wanted to do it, they should have simply asked, is Gonzalo Curiel of Hispanic descent? That's what you should ask. He might very well be Mexican, but it makes no difference. But what upset me is how they play into it. I had somebody 7 years ago, when they were all making fun of Sarah Palin. Okay? You know her, the story. She ran for vice president under John McCain. Now, was I a big Sarah Palin fan? No. She was former governor of Alaska. But they kind of wanted to make her look stupid. And I was talking to somebody, this was at the time, that was so Democrat, so liberal, which is fine. But they never see, and I tell them, I said, you got to look at both sides of all these issues. And that person, who's quite knowledgeable, said to me, Sarah Palin is such an idiot. She said you could see Russia from Alaska. Now listen to me, everybody. Listen.
Can't even see San Antonio.
No, listen.
I bet you can.
Listen. They made fun of Sarah Palin for saying that. And she said it at one point to show the danger, which we're in now, that Russia, if we ever had a problem with Russia, you could see Russia from Alaska. That's what she said. And the media made fun of her. And Saturday Night Live made fun of her. And the person that also brought it up, who's a big Democrat liberal, was laughing. And I said to the person, I said, did you know you could see Russia from Alaska? And they thought I was joking. I said, no. You could see Russia. You could see Russia from Alaska.
Oh, yeah?
Correct.
Where?
The point of Russia, the reason that's deceptive is if you look on a world map, the world map cuts off Russia on one side, and on the other side of the world map, where it cuts off, is Alaska, if you look at it a particular way. But if you look on a globe, you could see Russia from Alaska. See, Cuba is only 90 miles off of Florida. You can't probably see it from Florida because it's an island. But, of course, Russia's a huge landmass. What Sarah Palin said was true. The media made fun of her not because it was not true. They made fun of her because it was something that you could use to make Sarah Palin look stupid. But many people that wanted Sarah Palin to look stupid really looked more stupid because they thought she was wrong. And she wasn't wrong. So it shows you how the media could manipulate. Many people till this day think that you cannot see Russia from Alaska. You certainly can. You certainly can. And when I told my liberal friend who was ranting on how stupid, but look at what the media did in this Mexican judge. The media simply never said whether Gonzalo Curiel was Mexican or not. The media, when they reported Trump accused him of being Mexican, and the World News did it last night with Scott Pelley, World News, and then they ended with, and the judge was born in Indiana, which that doesn't mean he's not Mexican. But they wanted to make you think, oh, what an idiot Trump is, because he said the judge was born in Mexico. He never said that. He just believed that he might be Mexican, and if he was, there's a lot of backlash against Trump. That's media manipulation, because the issue wasn't whether or not the guy was Mexican. The issue wasn't whether or not those documents. The issue was, that upset me, was look how the media manipulated that. They did a big thing on wanting Trump to reveal whether he gave that charitable money to the vets. But a bigger thing would have been the Clinton Foundation money. All the money she received from Saudi Arabia and foreign governments while she was Secretary of State for a private foundation, which was illegal. She wasn't supposed to do that when you're Secretary of State. Those are big issues. So that's what upsets me about it. Okay, I'll do the Ogopogo, and I'll show you, I just remembered, I'll show you how, Lou, say hi. Okay. Me and my friend Joe Cabrera were at the firehouse, 20 years ago. And Joe, he's a friend of mine. I haven't seen those guys in a long time. I think he's captain now. And so we'd watch at night. He liked to watch those shows on UFOs or whatever, and I liked them. I watched them too. So we're watching one show about like a Loch Ness Monster type thing in Canada. Well, and it was the mystery of the Ogopogo. Supposedly the Ogopogo is this like Loch Ness thing that they spotted in the waters of Canada. So the show, how these things are, have you seen Bigfoot type things. So as we're watching the show, the locals that spotted the Ogopogo in the past and the stories, it's like a huge, huge water creature, who knows, maybe 100 feet long, but they say it's big, monstrous, and it looks somewhat maybe like a beaver would look. That's kind of how it was described, because no one ever caught one on camera. Well, the show me and my friend Joe are watching at the firehouse, but for the first time, they had one on camera. So me and my friend Joe are watching it. And as we're watching it, they then, the commercial comes on, and then they have the video. And we're watching it at the firehouse, sitting there at night. And then they show the video, and I'm walking around the kitchen, I'm reading or whatever, and I hear Joe talking, because I always had the news on or boxing, so when the guys, I had to give them their turn, and they'd watch these things or whatever. So Joe's talking to himself. There was just two of us at the little firehouse, Station 2. And then they show the video, and my friend Joe says, that looks like a beaver on the video. So I'm watching that at that point, and I'm thinking, okay, well, let's see the explanation. That goes to commercial. They said this Ogopogo, which was never spotted on camera before, they said for the first time it's spotted, and my friend Joe said, that looks like a beaver. And they said, and the show said, it was a miniature Ogopogo. So instead of admitting that 100-foot beaver Ogopogo doesn't exist, the only one they ever caught on video happened to be a miniature one that looks exactly like a beaver. Well, of course, we're laughing because it was a beaver. But those idiots or those people probably believed that for the first time we spotted one, but it's a miniature, it's a dwarf. But that shows you how even media narrative, when people have biases, they don't want to look at the truth. And if you've been hunting for, quote, that 100-foot beaver for your whole life, and you had spottings, and finally you got somebody that caught a beaver on camera, and instead of saying, it's just a beaver, no, it's the first one we ever caught, but just happens to be a miniature one. That's how we get manipulated. And look, when you talk about a lot of these issues of politics and all, that happens on a large scale, on all types of issues. And some of the issues are serious, like war, why justification, why we go into certain nations. Some of that is manipulation. Some of that's manipulation. So we have 3 titles. I don't know. The Man Whore, Ogopogo. I might add a few on because I told those stories. Okay? That's it. Say bye.
Bye.
Bye, Lou.
Bye.
Okay, that's it. Oh, I'll do the rattlesnake that bit the dog, Han. I'll try and tell that next time. Bye. Okay.